Welcome. So what I have here is y equals negative x squared plus 13x minus 12. And what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to solve this by factoring. And the factoring technique is what I'm going to call the box technique. All right, so remember, by factoring, what we want to do is we want to take a quadratic that's in this format, and we want to be able to rewrite it in this format, so therefore then we can solve. So this is what we call our intercept form, and this is our standard form. So we want to rewrite it as a product of its factors. You can see when rewriting intercept form, we have it as a product. So to rewrite this as a product, because then we can solve for x, because what we're trying to do is we want to find the values of x when this is going to equal 0. And if we can rewrite it as a product, then we can apply the zero product property, which I'll talk about in a second. So the method I'm going to use is what we call the box method. And in the box method, what you want to think about is when we look at the area of a rectangle or square or anything, we're multiplying our length times our width, right? So this is a product. So what we want to do is be able to find what are the values, which we call the factors, that multiply to give us this. So if I give you a box, and let's say 3 times 4, well, we can say the area of this, which is the product, is going to be 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite the product, or the area of this rectangle, inside this box. I'm going to break up into 4 sections because what we have is I'm going to break it up into 4 sections because what we have is we have a product of our, we have a sum here. So I'm going to write, actually, the first thing before I even get to that, we don't really like to factor when our a is equal to -1. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually factor out a -1. And I'll show you how that's going to change our problem here in a second. So now what I can do is I can, let's put in our products, and let's just forget about the -13 for a second. Let's just put in the x squared and the 12. So what I'll do is I'll put an x squared here, and I'm going to put a 12 there. Now, we know that to find the product of x squared, that's going to have to be x times x. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break up the -13x. But before I do that, I need to kind of think about this and say, all right, what are my products that I can multiply to give me 12? Well, I could do 3 and 4. But remember, my 3 and 4 have to add up to my -13. So when looking at this, and I want to break up x squared equals to 12, what I want to do is now look at this and say, all right, which products, when I add up equal to 12, are going to, what numbers, when I multiply to give me 12, are going to add up to -13? Well, I could say the 2 numbers that add up to -13 would be a -12 and a -1. All right. So now what I need to do is when I'm looking at the area, I can simply see this that, well, x times what is going to give me -1? Well, this is going to have to be x times x is x squared. That's a -1x, and that's a -12x. So x times what gives me -1x? That's -1. X times what gives me -12x? That's a -12. And then what you can see is these are what we're going to call our 2 factors. So I still have this negative outside of here, which is going to be our a. And therefore, I have x minus 1 times x minus 12. So the main important thing when doing the box method is to apply into your problems and then take my 12 and say, all right, what 2 numbers multiply to give me 12, but then are going to add to give me -13? And remember that -13 is linear. It's -13x. That's why I added the x's in there. And then if you're just going to add the sum of all these, right? Remember, this is the sum. This is the product, your area. Well, if you added all this up together, you get x squared minus 13x plus 12, which was our original problem being multiplied by a negative, right? When we multiply it by a negative, you can see that's what it gets. But then the factored form are going to be our 2 factors multiplied by -1. Now we need to solve it. So by applying the zero product property, since I've wrote this in a product, I know that this times that equals 0. So it doesn't matter. To get rid of the negative, the reason why I factored out, because it's not going to affect our answer. Divide by -1, and I get 0 equals x minus 1 times x minus 12. Now I can set both of them equal to 0, because when you have a product of 2 numbers or factors that equal 0, one of them has to equal 0. So I add 1 to the other side using my inverse operations, adding 12 to the other side, and I get x equals 1 and x equals 12. So those are going to be your x-intercepts, your solutions, your zeros, depending on how your problem's going to be phrased, but that's how you solve. Thanks.